spitting syllables, soliloquies so simple as these.
It's Wreckin' and Rappin', a podcast with a purpose to save humanity and enlighten the dark. I'm your host, King Cooper. Congratulations, you ran into Missing No. Your reward is 128 rare candies. How will you spend it? Using rare candy to gain levels makes a Pokémon weaker than they would be gaining them naturally. This is true in life too. Money can't buy experience. Turning now to Shakespeare, we've got another procreation sonnet. He seems to be fixated on the topic. He expresses the young man's obligation and necessity to have children in order to transfer beauty to the following generation. Here's Shakespeare's sonnet number 6. Then let not winter's ragged hand deface in thee thy summer ere thou be distilled. Make sweet some vial, treasured thou some place, with beauty's treasure ere it be self-killed. That use is not forbidden usury, which happies those that pay the willing loan. That's for thyself to breed another thee, or 10 times happier, be it 10 for 1. 10 times thyself were happier than thou art, if 10 of thine 10 times refigured thee. Then what could death do if thou shouldest depart, leaving thee in posterity? Be not self-willed, for thou art much too fair to be death's conquest and make worms thine heir. Seriously studying these works diffuses the mystery of Shakespeare, like how we've seen so many sonnets on the same scene. It might be more enjoyable to not know what he's saying. For this reason, I don't like to learn the lyrics of all rap songs, and especially true with Eminem's fast raps. In some way, it takes away from the song. Thinking too much ruins emotions. Zimmy Zamboomafoo, let's wreck Shakespeare's written. Let not winter's ragged hand deface. Hand and face are body parts. Ragged meaning old and torn. This is not the first time we've seen Shakespeare's use of winter along with thy summer, ere thou be distilled. We also discussed last week what being distilled means. Ere, spelled E-R-E, means before. Don't let winter destroy your summer before producing goods. Make sweet some vial. The vial would be the sweet essence created from distillation. Treasure thou some place with beauty's treasure ere it be self-unalived. There's a double entendre with treasure. First use is to cherish, and the second is treasure as valuable goods. That use is not forbidden usury. We've discussed usury before. There's wordplay with use and usury, saying there's nothing wrong with using your body's goods. Which happies those that pay the willing loan. Loan is a reference to usury, saying those that go into this debt, the debt is having kids. Those that have kids are happy to pay the price. The next section gets fun, sounding a little more like modern rap, with all the babies that are about to pop up. Thyself to breed another thee. Rhymes, another thee is your kid. Or 10 times happier, be it 10 for 1. You are the one, and 10 are your kids, being proportionally happier with each one. 10 times thyself were happier than thou art, if 10 of thine 10 times refigured thee. This is the rapping-esque flow I mentioned. I take this to be that your 10 kids, each having 10 kids, makes you 100 times happier than thou art now. Then what could death do if thou shouldest depart, leaving thee in posterity? Depart like unalived. Even though your mortal coil is gone, you live in posterity. Live on through your future generations. Be not self-willed, for thou art much too fair to be death's conquest, and make worms thine heir. Self-willed seems like stubborn. Then you're too beautiful to be beaten out of existence. Making worms thine heir is not having kids, and when put in the ground, worms would be feeding and breeding on your ragged flesh. There's a part where I chose to say unalived a couple times in explaining Shakespeare. Part of the reason the show is what it is is to teach new words and phrasing in order to say censored words. We can't even begin to have a conversation because the important topics are blocked. Through improving our language, we can circumnavigate this obstacle. There are ideas humans have had and ways of thinking that if a person has not been made aware of, they cannot see what's in front of them. Let's move on to rap. Speaking of fast Eminem earlier, for the rapping portion is a song I've learned because I like the message in the words. I trade the musical aspect for a motivational one, as I repeat the song to myself like a mantra. People should understand about art there are many ways to consume it beyond the five senses. I see a lot with people recording themselves thinking the audience will see what they saw. Even Eminem on Mike Tyson's podcast mentioned how, while performing at the Oscars, his microphone pack was dangling and he thought that's all people would notice. Stop trying to put yourself in someone else's head. This is the last verse on Eminem's Offended. Now my dough's a mountain to a mountain. It's rise to high to count it. Never asked to be rich, all I did was wish I had a dime for every time that I was doubted. But then I think about it, and then I'm enraged, because I just figured out if I was paid for the time I spent to put pen to the page, it'd be minimum wage. But it's embedded in my head, never hunted for the bread and butter one. One was to be the one they're scared of, but I'm never going to get the credit for sweat and blood to put up in the pen. And when I done a wood, would they put me on a pedestal? Forget I was ever this incredible. I guess I better go harder than ever, because I made I get another opportunity again to defend many people as I can, simply because I can. Time to break down the bars. My dough's a mountain to a mountain. Dough is slang for money. A mountain to a mountain is good wordplay. He has a pile of money. All I did was wish I had a dime for every time I was doubted. He's describing the struggle to become great. People will doubt you well after you've proven them wrong. There is a play on the expression, if I had a nickel for every time blank, using dime to rhyme with time. There's also a lot of money talk. Dough, rich, dime. Coming up will be paid and minimum wage. I just figured out if I was paid for the time I spent to put pen to the page, it'd be minimum wage. Continuing the struggle to be great, if he were paid by the hour as a normal job is, despite being a multimillionaire, he has spent so many hours working his craft that the dollars per hour would be low. I never hunted for the bread and butter. What I wanted was to be the one they were scared of. This was never about money. Being the tip of the spear is the point that cuts. That's what people fear. He was bullied as a kid, made to feel weak. He made himself strong. I'm never going to get the credit for the sweat and blood I put up in the pen. Even after all he's accomplished, some people don't consider Eminem a top 5 rapper because of his skin tone. Still, he must keep pushing. A dime for every time he was doubted. Also, bread and butter and credit are money terms adding to my list. Please take a moment to subscribe or follow the channel. Also, I got a shout out for a friend of the show, Strong Lead Hook, a new YouTube channel. Link in the description. Now, for the wreck of the week. Brr, brr, brr. What's wrecking King Cooper's week? Snow! I live in the American South, and no cap, places shut down over the thought of snow. Daycare was closed, and I had to spend a lot of time with my kid. We got to build a snowman for the first time, which was nice, but we're wrecking right now. It was below freezing for over a day. I ran out of sliced bread. Next time they call for snow, I'm running out and buying a dozen loaves of bread. Now, with all this wrecking, I need to calm down with some meditations. That's Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. We're up to number 13, from Catullus, not to spurn a friend's criticism, even if it may be an unreasonable complaint, but to try to restore his usual feelings, to speak of one's teachers with wholehearted gratitude, as is recorded of Domitius and Athenodotus, and a genuine love for children. To go over some of those lines, not to spurn a friend's criticism, spurn, rejecting with disdain, or a strong rejection. They are your friends for a reason, unless they shouldn't be. When they criticize, remember that they want what's best for you. If they don't want what's best for you, then drop that sack of potatoes. It's hard to realize when in that situation, criticism could have been a constant in your relationship to where it seemed like a normal thing you've always done. when in reality, there are people that see the success of others, thinking they deserve more, then sabotage what they can. Even if it may be an unreasonable complaint, try to restore his usual feelings. An unreasonable complaint would likely come from them not being able to understand the emperor's situation, so they offer advice that doesn't exactly fit the bill. Trying to restore their usual feelings is remembering they want what's best. So look at the complaint from whatever angles you can, trying to distill the essence of what they see. Then attempt to fix it with your own judgment. Speak of one's teachers with wholehearted gratitude. You wouldn't have the perspective on life you do without your teachers. They helped make you. Be grateful for any advantage they've given. I said before, if someone doesn't explain a concept you've never encountered, there is so much information in the world that your brain won't bother recognizing the foreign. Learning new things is hard. It makes you feel inadequate and that the new information isn't necessary. You've gotten this far without it. Listen to the king. We've only just begun. Sir Isaac Newton once said, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." What did he mean by that? He's being humble. If I've seen further, then he gives credit to those he's learned from, his teachers. Marcus Aurelius mentions Domitius and Athenodotus. Domitius is likely Quintus Juniatus Rusticus Domitius, and I couldn't find anything on the name Athenodotus. They were both teachers of the Roman emperor and philosophers in their own right. A genuine love for children. Through Shakespeare, the Bible, and elsewhere, we've discussed how everything we do is for the children. Do your best to give them more. And the person who yells at kids or wants to educate them with adult ideas before they're ready to grow up, that person should not be trusted. This Week in History. On January 26, 1942, the first American Expeditionary Force arrived in Belfast, Northern Ireland, setting sail from Brooklyn, New York, into the European theater of war. This officially marked the beginning of American involvement in World War II. The first troops were part of the 34th Infantry Division, also known as the Red Bull Division, a National Guard unit consisting of troops from Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. Until then, German U-boats were operating with impunity off the Atlantic coast of the United States. Impunity means without punishment. If you're enjoying the show, please leave a comment. I'd love for you to join in the conversation. We'll be reading the Bible next. Amen. 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 Psalm number 5 is a morning prayer by David that asks God for guidance and deliverance. Here is Psalm number 5. Give ear to my words, O Lord. Consider my meditation. Hearken unto the voice of my cry, my King and my God. For unto thee will I pray. My voice shalt thou hear in the morning, O Lord. In the morning will I direct my prayer unto thee, and will look up. For thou art not a God that hath pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell with thee. The foolish shall not stand in thy sight. Thou hatest all workers of iniquity. Thou shalt destroy them that speak leasing. The Lord will abhor the bloody and deceitful man. But as for me, I will come into thy house in the multitude of thy mercy, and in thy fear will I worship toward the holy temple. Lead me, O Lord, in thy righteousness, because of mine enemies. Make thy way straight before my face, for there is no faithfulness in their mouth. Their inward part is very wickedness. Their throat is an open sepulchre. They flatter with their tongue. Destroy thou them, O God. Let them fall by their own counsels. Cast them out in the multitude of their transgressions, for they have rebelled against thee. But let all those that put their trust in thee rejoice. Let them ever shout for joy, because thou defendest them. Let them also that love thy name be joyful in thee. For thou, Lord, wilt bless the righteous, and favor wilt thou compass with him as a shield. This is the word of the Lord. Going over some of those lines. Give ear to my word, an invocation of the muses, asking to be heard. Also, consider my meditation. That reminds me of Marcus Aurelius's meditations. For thou art not a god that hath pleasure in wickedness, neither shall evil dwell with thee. I come at this from the perspective that God is good by definition, the good. Saying the world is mind, believing our words and thoughts create the reality ahead of us, people will pray to the devil, telling themselves some story about his beauty. But at the end of the day, he rebelled against God. If the devil is their good, God must be their bad. Then the devil is themselves. They connect with that role of the fallen. Understandable. I don't see myself in God. God is in me. In verse 5, the foolish shall not stand in thy sight. Thou hatest all workers of iniquity. Iniquity being immoral or a conscious decision to go against God's will. God is the head. There is no debate. You're either with or against. I couldn't conceive of a more foolish act than to go against the creator of the universe. It says they shall not stand in God's sight. There is shame felt with iniquity. That's why people will dull their senses with substances and avoid looking at the light that reveals all. In verse 6, thou shalt destroy them that speak leasing. The Lord will abhor the bloody and deceitful man. Leasing here means lying. Someone will see God destroying as cruel. They have destroyed themselves. Turn into the light at any time, freely, seek forgiveness, and receive it. Verse 7, multitude of thy mercy is a nice rap. And in thy fear will I worship toward the holy temple. We covered in a previous psalm, rejoice in fear and trembling. Note this worship is toward the holy temple. You're not there yet, and now is not a time to relax. In verse 8, make thy way straight before my face. One interpretation could be God asking God not to tempt him or asking to make things easy. This is also a good time to cover the acronym KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Try not to overcomplicate or overburden yourself. In verse 9, for there is no faithfulness in their mouth. This is the mouths of the leasing liar. Their throat is an open sepulchre. They flatter with their tongues. Sepulchre means a place of burial or tomb. They're already dead. Flatter with their tongues would be in line with lying. Not only would they try to flatter God to get into heaven when Jesus knows you not, they would also try to win through flattery of men. It was said to me recently, the wisdom of men is in vain. Now in verse 10, destroy thou them, O God, let them fall by their own counsels. Like I said, they destroy themselves. God doesn't have to bring down a hammer. As soon as they turn their backs, they're doomed. Falling by their own counsels is hubris of man, thinking their reason or science can save them or lead them to light. Cast them out in the multitude of their transgressions, for they have rebelled against thee. Transgression means to go against God's law, coming from the Latin verb transgredi, which means to step across or beyond. There are limits to man, and when they rebel against God, they have gone beyond the limits. In verse 11, let all those that put their trust in thee rejoice. Let them ever shout for joy, because thou defendest them. Put your trust in the Lord, have faith, and be forever joyful. Don't confuse this with the type of material happiness. Happy because of the Lord, not because of what the Lord gives you. There's also mention that he defendest them. You're taken care of. In verse 12, for thou, Lord, wilt bless the righteous. With favor wilt thou compass him as with a shield. I wanted to draw a connection between compass and when verse 8 asks to make the way straight, always asking for help and protection to be shielded. We can move on to philosophy. Did somebody say philosophy? We're reading the 50 philosophy ideas you really need to know. We're up to number 15, the Hooray theory. This book was written in 2007, before the first iPhone was made. A more modern version would be the like-dislike theory. arguing that moral theory boils down to likes and dislikes, or boos and hoorays, calling it emotivism, claiming morals stem from our emotions. Notice this is a binary way of thinking. It could just as easily be 1 for good, 0 for bad, attempting to cut out all the wasteful arguing. Perhaps an umbrella to emotivism is subjectivism, that opinions on right and wrong are subjective based on a personality and culture. The Scottish philosopher David Hume said in a treatise of human nature, take any action allowed to be vicious, willful violence, for instance, examine it in all lights and see if you can find that matter of fact or real existence which you call vice. In whichever way you take it, you find only certain passions, motives, volitions, and thoughts. There is no other matter of fact in the case. The vice is entirely escapes you. As long as you consider the object, you never can find it, till you turn your reflection into your own breast and find a sentiment of disapprobation, which arises in you toward this action. Here is a matter of fact, but 'tis the object of feeling, not of reason. It lies in yourself, not in the object. Feeling, rather than reason, provides the motive for our moral actions. And here is a picture of David Hume on a treatise of human nature. What a strapping young buck. We have a quote from William Shakespeare. Does that name sound familiar? Has anybody heard of William Shakespeare? Maybe from Sonnet number 6? There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. That thinking word is man's doing. Think something, then make it so, not intrinsic in the object. This should serve as a warning for thinking God is wrong. Thinking is an earthly deed and not to be trusted. Thinking cannot produce fact. The most common criticism of emotivism is that it fails to capture the logic of ethical discourse, the characteristic patterns of reasoning and rational argument that underlie it. To rectify this, a school of thought branching from subjectivism is prescriptivism. The moral items prescribe how to feel. They tell us what to do and how to behave. In this way, moral commands become universal and must be followed by everyone, including the rule creator. There is no special circumstances or loopholes, that is to say, not realistic. Nowadays, it's popular to think of things on a spectrum. Spectrum implies no hard lines, no rules. A simplistic description of emotivism is morals are not descriptions of the action, but are feelings of the action. When saying something is wrong, what it's really saying is it feels wrong to the individual spouting the morals. Those arguing against say there isn't enough ethical knowledge, where the emotivist believes there is nothing ethical to know. We're not making claims on ethical fact, rather expressing our feelings, and feelings cannot be true or false. Since there is nothing to debate on action, people are simply advertising their morals, or a more common phrase today, virtue signaling. In 2025, virtue signaling is back on the menu, boys. Possibly more than ever, people are saying, look at this thing, isn't it bad? Forcing you to agree with them, or you are also bad. In reality, they've gotten hooked on a storyline that brings with it a set of rules. Don't follow the rules, and you can't be a part of the story, because people living happy, moral lives outside of the rules means their story is a fiction. The reason I've been aggressive on a lot of topics is because I understand these people are just trying to get their foot in the door, then lead us on to the next crazy idea. I am happy, I am good. No amount of earthly thinking and words will convince me to betray myself. Be gone, Satan. Are you ready? We've got math. The numbers are 7, 2, 6, and 2. What I would do is 7 plus 2 equals 9. 9 times 2 is 18, and 18 plus 6 is 24. Congratulations! Yay! We've done it! We've got some math. Oh, I love a good multiplication by 9. So, of course, we should cover the finger trick for multiplication by 9. Hold up your 10 fingers, and when you put a finger down, the fingers still up will be your answer. Left of the down finger is the 10 digit, and the right is the ones digit. So we have 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, 54, 63, 72, 81, and 10 times 9 is 90. Now, I argue that everyone should memorize the multiplication table up to 15 times 15. So 9 times 11 is 99, times 12 is 108, times 13 is 117, times 14 is 126, and 9 times 15 is 135. You've learned something today. Final thought, you're sitting at the steering wheel. Take hold of it. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a nice day. Goodbye.